thanks for the introduction. We will start by showing the movie, and I guess most of you already saw Tears of Steel, right? Who didn't see it yet? Whoa, wow. Two guys, okay, that's good. But it's even better because I will show you a new version, the brand new 4K version on this projector, which is not even HD, but this is very fresh from the render farm. Francesco is going to talk about that later. The benefit is it's much better because we have more resolution. That means it's more crisp, and it has been regraded. So there is some enhancements. And yeah, we will start by watching the movie. So I can go and leave you alone because the movie is going to take 12 minutes. So enjoy.
We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1.
You're a jerk, Tom.
Look, Celia, we have to follow our passions. You have your robotics, and I just want to be awesome in space.
Why don't you just admit that you're freaked out by my robot hand?
I'm not freaked out by it's. All right, fine. I'm freaked out. I'm having nightmares that I'm being chased by these giant robotic claws.
Whatever, Tom. We're done.
Robot's memory synced and locked.
This is pretty freaky.
Shouldn't you be down there? I heard you guys talking last night. It's not my fault, you know?
Are you ready? Of course you're ready. You're a rock star. How's it looking, Barley?
We should have about 10 minutes.
Well, that's perfect. We're only one. All systems go. Yeah, you go. Go. Move your asses. Go, go, go. I love it. Come on. Go. That's nice. Nothing to worry about. Tom.
There she is. Now, you'll love her. She's your passion. Be tender to her. Be honest. Be tender. Remind her what love is.
And action!
Memory override in progress.
You're a jerk, Tom.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Look, Celia, we have to follow our passions. You have your robotics, and I just want to be awesome in space.
Okay, they're coming. 2 minutes left.
2 minutes. Speed it up, Tom. Vivacissimo!
Why don't you just admit that you're freaked out by my robot hand?
Listen, Celia, I was young and a dick, but there's no reason to destroy the world.
Why does he do this?
We already tried that one.
Abort!
Cut!
No! You broke my heart.
I know.
You forgot me on Earth.
I know.
I should just crush you.
Oh. I'm sorry.
Good ad-lib.
Not my fault. This time.
Well set.
We're out of time. We're out of time.
The world's changed, Celia.
Memory override complete!
You know, there's a lesson to be learned from this.
Could have gone worse.
Thanks. So, this was the movie. Where is it? Here. First, I have to apologize. I have a little cold, so my voice might not be the best.
Slow.
Good. Yeah, slow. I also tend to talk too fast, so I have to remind myself to talk slow. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the production of Tears of Steel. It's a short film of the Blender Foundation, as you probably all know. Who doesn't know about open movies or what this short film is? So everyone knows everything. That's great. There's of course lots of different things that you could talk about if you're doing a presentation about this movie. And I decided to talk a little bit about the production, not really the technical aspect, but more how is it like to produce a movie in the Blender Foundation or in the Blender Institute. So this will be one part of my talk, and the other part will be some technical demos to show you some files, to show you the tracking and a little bit of keying and compositing. Of course, in the limited time that I have, I can only show some parts of that, so it will not be really a tutorial or something that you could learn from that or so. Good. So producing a short movie with Blender is of course a lot of fun. But let's talk about the production and the pipeline maybe. And as I've said, after that there will be a workflow demo. So it all started in March 2012, last year, in the Blender Institute Amsterdam. That's where all the open movies have been produced except for Elephant's Dream. So this is the Blender Institute. It's a very nice place. There are 8 very nice workstations and some more computers. Lots of bikes, because it's in Holland, in the Netherlands, that's full of bikes. And this is just the place. So just so that you know where we have been working. So this is the kitchen. Then we had the burning room for the PlayStation. This is the coder's cave. So here on the right side there would be Campbell. On the left side there would be Sergei or Brecht. A part of the render farm, which is in the shower. So we have a room that was used as a shower, but now is being used as render farm. So this is one part of the farm, and this is the entrepôt dock. This is where the Blender Institute is. It's very beautiful. So the whole setting to do a movie there is already very nice, and it was very exciting. So this is part of the team. After the first week in the Blender Institute, we started with a kick-off workshop so that the team could get to know each other. Okay, so this is a little bit about the place, and now about the production of Tears of Steel. So maybe back to this photo. We have been a team of 5 to 7 artists. That changed sometimes, and 2 to 3 coders. And we all have been working inside of the Blender Institute and doing the movie, which was very fun. Okay, so about the production of Tears of Steel. First, of course, if you do a short movie, you need a production plan. I have to talk slowly, I have to remind myself of that. So, first, of course, you start with concept art. Actually, that's already wrong. Of course, first you start with an idea and with a script. I didn't even write that down. Of course, you have to have a script. And the script came from Ian Hubert, the director. And when you have a script, then you can start doing the concept art, because you have to know how the movie will look like in the end. So then you do a storyboard, then you do an animatic, then someday you start shooting if it's a VFX movie. Of course, you have to film. Then you prepare the footage, you start the tracking, the masking, so you do the layout, the animation, and the compositing, the grading, and then eventually someday you will be ready. So for all this we had 6 months, 3 months of pre-production and 3 months of post-production. For post-production, all in all, it was, I think, 135 shots or so in 3 months. So we had a little bit to do. And if you do production, usually, maybe most of the people, maybe not here, but typically people use maybe Photoshop for concept art and texturing, Premiere or Final Cut, After Effects for compositing and some effects. And then eventually Blender for modeling, maybe Modo. Go back. What was this? Blender, Modo, Maya, Max. So these are the typical tools that you would find in a production studio. And of course, if you do an open movie in the Blender Foundation, you work with open tools. So you have an open pipeline. And of course, that's Blender mainly. And the workstations have been running Ubuntu. Texturing, concept art has been done in Krita, and of course the GIMP, and then for managing all the shots we used OpenOffice. Okay, so maybe first start with the concept art. We had David Revoy, who was also working on Sinter. He was doing the concept art for us, and he started with some ideas first, before we even had the story finished, and that of course helped developing the ideas. So these are all shots that didn't end up in the movie because we had to change the script in the end. And this was then one concept of the dome and the bridge where everything happened. Once the concept art is ready, you can do the storyboard. So you finish and finalize the script, and then you break down the script into all the different shots and do a storyboard for that. And this was done by David Revoy and Ian Hubert. They worked together in February 2012, so they had 2 weeks before the rest of the team arrived, and they started to do the storyboards. So there are 3 images from the storyboards. They split it up into different scenes and arranged that, and from what I heard, that worked really nice with Krita and the GIMP, so that was successful. And then at one point there was the entire movie laid down in these tiny images. That's not even all of them, that's just a little part. So that gave us an idea what we needed, like what characters, how they might look like, the clothes that they were wearing, then the robot of course, and how would the place look like, captain with an eye patch, and all these little details that really helps you to get an idea of what you have to do. And yeah, then you print it out and put it on a wall. I mean, this thing there, so just as a visual reference, and if you have to talk about what you have to do, then you can just go there and know what you have to do. So that was the storyboard, and once you have the storyboard ready, you want to see it animated, or at least you want to see it in time, so you can work on the animatic. And in Blender you do that in the video sequence editor. And a lot of people think that the Blender sequence editor is really quite crappy. If you would only use it for editing, that might be true. But if you work in a Blender-centric pipeline, then the video sequence editor is really awesome, because you can not only edit the video, you can do much more things with that. So you can just import all the images into the video sequence editor, and then you can start working on the timing. You make the single pictures longer or shorter. You can put sound under it, and maybe I can just show you that before I show you the crappy-matic. So let's see, where are we? So the animatic, storyboards. Of course, yeah, that would have been so nice. Yeah, that would be so useful to see it without the UI. No, I mean, it's of course, I use SVN, I always use the development versions, and somebody screwed up the video sequence editor, apparently. So opening this with the tomato branch works, because the tomato branch is worked on by Sergey, and he's awesome. Okay, so this is the sequence editor, and you can see all these single files of the storyboard, and you can make them shorter or longer, and this is a really great tool to start working on your movie, because you can see it in motion. You can see how the timing would look like. If you play that back, you can see the first scene. You could even put a dialogue under that, so this is a really very helpful tool. And the nice thing about the Blender sequence editor is that you can not only use it to play back images, you can also play back blend files. And this is the next step. This would be then the so-called crappy-matic. Crappy-matic because you work with characters, but they are very crappy. They are not very detailed. It's just so that you have something that you can make move to maybe get the motion right. You can plan the camera movements. So for example, the first scene in the crappy-matic looks like this. So, and it's actually, if you compare that with the movie, this is totally amazing how close this is to how it actually looked like. This is almost identical. So this is, it's a very helpful tool to develop your movie. And another part of the process while doing the crappy-matic is you can also start working on the environments, also how to put it into the studio, like plan how it would look like with a green screen. You can lay out the sets and all these things. This is while you do the crappy-matic. This is a screenshot from the sequence editor. Maybe I go back to the sequence editor. So this would be the previous edit. So it almost looks like before, just the color is different. But the good thing is, this is not a rendered movie file, this is a blend file. This is actually, this one strip here, this is being rendered live with OpenGL viewport. And you could apply speed effects to that. So you can not only edit this and make it shorter or longer, you can apply effects to that. If you want to change the speed, you can easily do that just by applying these sequence editor effect strips to the blend files. So this is very nice. And to prove you that these are actually blend files, I'm going to go to a different screen and open up maybe one of these. So you can see here, these are blend files. And if I press Alt-A, you can see the playback. Here the cameras are moving. And these files are linked in. So Ian, our director, can work on this file on the rough edit or the crappy-matic, while Jeremy, our animator and rigger, could work on the single files. So you have the storyboard and you say, okay, so I have scene 1 2A maybe. So you prepare a blend file 1 2A or whatever name you give it, and then the animator can bring in the environment just as a very rough reference like these. So this is the town, and it's just a visual reference to see where things are in place, and then he can start animating that. And when he's finished, Ian can then link this scene into the crappy-matic, so he can work on the timing and refine the animatic and the storyboards maybe. So the Blender video sequence editor is a very powerful and very nice tool. It could be better though, but for this kind of work it's really nice. And of course during the production we got a few more tools to that, because that's the benefit if you work in the Blender Institute. The coders are just a few meters away, so if you need something, you go there and say, I want to have ripple edit, and they give it to you, usually after a few hours. So in this case, ripple edit is, I think everyone knows that from Premiere or Final Cut. So I can just press a button and then everything will go and close the gap. So that's just backspace, and this is ripple edit. Very nice. And this is one of the things that we got during the production. Okay, back to the presentation, because time is running. I'm probably also talking too fast, but so to make these things work, like even if you do just the crappy-matic, you have to prepare your project. You have your characters, your environments, your props, everything nicely clean, separated in folders, in a directory, and from there you can then link that into, for example, a shot file, for example, shot 1. Everything is linked in, so the actual file, shot 1, is very small, because everything is just linked. And from that, from there you go to the animatic and can do the editing. And of course you do the same with shot 2, 4, 5, and 3 and all the other ones. So it's a very nice workflow, and you can use that for the final edit as well. So our rough edit that I've showed you was the base for the final edit. So when we had all the rendered files, we can just put them on top of the OpenGL renders, and we immediately have the final movie, so to say. You don't have to edit it new, you just reuse this rough edit. Oh, the demo is already, I showed you already, so let's move on. Hang on.
Are you ready? Of course you're ready. You're a rock star.
Come on, I want to pause this. Okay. So this is just to show you how close the final result is to the rough edit. Because especially if you do filming, you really have to prepare the camera angles. The actors have to know what to do. You have to put the actors in an environment. So this is a very good help. It's a very good tool to plan that. And here you can see how close this was to the movie.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so don't start filming without a crappy matic, because it helps you. Okay, so this was the pre-production, and it happened during March, April, because in May the shooting started. And during the pre-production, like I showed you, Ian was working on the animatic and the storyboards. But also the modeling started. And Ian, because he's an incredibly fast worker, he not only did the crappy-matic, he was also modeling. So these are the generators from the very first week of the production. And this ended up almost one-to-one in the final movie. So the modeling had to start as well. This is the robot, the quadbot. It's also from the very first week of production, which in retrospect I find incredible. I mean, this is so fast. I mean, if you work in the studio, you don't really see how things are going because you work on your own stuff. But seeing this design in the first week is, for me, I think it's very awesome. So this is then the environment. So we took pictures of the city. Nicolo, who was doing the modeling, he took pictures from Google Earth, and just as a reference to be able to lay down where everything should happen. So we had this church, de Oude Kerk, it's a famous church in Amsterdam, and this is where everything happened. The church was the command center, and directly not within the church, but close to the church, was the dome. Oh, thank you. And this dome was where this projection of the quadbot happened. So, and of course, you have to know where exactly is that, because we planned to film there. So, really making sure to know where and how the environment is looking is very important as well. Well, I was doing mostly tracking experiments because I was also working on my DVD, the track match blend or camera tracking in Blender. So I was mainly doing tests at that point. I didn't do any modeling. I was just trying to make sure that the tracking in the end would work. Which, by the way, my part was mostly the motion tracking, which is also why I will focus on that part of the production. So I was only doing tests. For example, here you can see parts of this church, and I've tried to track the scene from different camera angles and then link these cameras together, trying to establish the entire environment just through tracking points. I think I failed because we didn't use it in the end, but it was a nice test. Then another thing we did, we were feeding cubes. So this was just a test there. And of course, we had to try to make sure that we could use cycles, because cycles at that point was still quite new. So we tried, when we had modeled, when we modeled the robot hand, we tried to make sure that the shaders that we used looked realistic. So we tried to composite the hand onto the table from the meeting room in the Blender Institute. And so of course the hand is artificial, but this guy and the sphere are also from Blender. So we try to really understand how the lighting system works, how we can do the compositing to make things really integrate into footage. And the other thing that happened during the pre-production was we had to find actors. So that was mainly Ton and Ian who were doing the casting. So they were mailing the agencies and trying to get actors that were interested. And then we had a bunch of guys who wanted to be part of the movie. And then of course there's the auditions happening.
You're a jerk, Tom! Look, we have to follow our passions. Look, you have your robotics, you know, and I just want to be awesome in space.
Why don't you just admit it? You're totally freaked out by my robot hand.
I'm not freaked out.
Oh no!
I'm not freaked out. All right, fine. Yes, I'm freaked out by your. I'm having nightmares about being chased by that claw.
Oh, we're done! We're done!
And we took them, of course, because they were awesome. And of course, the other thing, before you do the shooting, before you film anything, you have to build the props that people can use. For example, we had the gun for Barley, who is on the tower. He has to shoot the party boat, what you called it. So Kjartan made different concepts for this gun. And then we ended up with a very nice evil design of a very evil sci-fi looking gun. And then you have to build it. You cannot just buy a gun, you build it yourself. So we bought these Nerf guns, which was fun. And then we disassembled them and put several pieces of several Nerf guns together and painted them black. So we ended up with a very nice Barley gun. And then in May, the day came where we did the shooting. And well, we were all noobs, except for Ian. Ian has done, I think he has been doing films since he was born. He was doing this for his entire life. So he really knew how this would look like, but we, I think, at least I, had no idea. Of course, I've seen the making-ofs of any Hollywood movies, but seeing a making-of or reading about that is very different from actually doing it. And also Ton, he has been doing animation films, but doing a film production is something completely different. So Ian has been working on Project London already and other projects, and that was mostly independent movies. And we were thinking about that, doing it the independent way, maybe just start filming with a DSLR camera, but we said no, let's do it pro. So we thought, let's get a kick-ass camera. So we got the Sony f65, which were at that time, there were only 2 of these cameras in Europe, and we had one of them, 8K sensor, a real shutter, so it's quite awesome. It's better than the Red Epic or so. That's just amateur stuff. So this is the real thing. And if you have a camera, then you can't just say, okay, start, and then you start filming. You need a badass DP, a director of photography, and we got one. So this is Joris. He was our DP, and he was also working with Ian to try to get the camera angles, maybe the looks and the lighting of the scene and all these things. So we got that, and we said, let's get a giant green screen studio if you want to do it pro. So we got one, and let's get a wegsleepregeling, which is Dutch and means it's from the city. They put a sign on a parking place so they cannot tow your car. And let's film in the red light district of Amsterdam. Of course you do that. If you are in Amsterdam, you go to the red light district and you put all your equipment there. Because there is the Oude Kerk. This is the church, the very famous church. And maybe you recognize here down there in the center, this is the command center. But the problem is it's in the red light district. Well, so that might have not been the best idea. And luckily, we not only got a director of photography, we also got assistant director, a gaffer who would do the lighting. And these guys, they knew their stuff. They have been doing production since years. So they are professional film production guys. So they said maybe it's not the best idea to put a 7,000 euro camera and 6 20,000 lenses in the center of the red light district. Red light district, camera, bad idea, because there are also the hookers, and that might not have been the best idea. And let's not talk of the giant crane that we wanted to put in front of the bridge. So we were looking for a different bridge, because there are lots of bridges in Amsterdam, and we found one nice, quiet bridge somewhere, no traffic, no red light district, so that should have been very easy, and it was very nice. But still, we had to put all the equipment on this bridge, so it was very crowded, and having this in the red light district would not have been nice. But even so, it was a quiet bridge, but still, there's traffic. And we had to film on this bridge, and you can see that Celia, the girl, she has this tracking device on her hand so that we could replace it with a robot hand. And maybe in the center you can see the dude on the bike on the bridge behind that bridge going past them while we were shooting. And if you want to replace this tracking device with a robot arm, you have to put something in the background, something different than a guy on a bike. So that was a roto nightmare. Because this is what it should look like, and there's the dude, and that was horrible. And that happened even though even Ton was standing on the bridges, like we had several people trying to make people stop while we were shooting, but they didn't care. That at one point while we were shooting on the bridge with all the equipment, there was someone on a Vespa going through the bridge behind our equipment. It's totally crazy. So you have to be a little bit creative, and you have to improvise, and you cannot control everything, because that happened as well. And speaking of improvisation,
why don't you just admit that you're freaked out by my robot hand?
So, oh, sorry, I cannot control this computer.
Just admit that you're freaked out by my robot hand.
Ah, come on. So this is the quadbot holding the guy, so we can shake him. So we had these two broomsticks to make him react to the robot hand, and it worked very nice. We had just a little bit of roto thing that we had to mask it out, but it worked very nice. So you have to improvise a lot, especially if you're outside. But even if you are in a green screen studio, it's a mess. And we didn't know. I mean, we knew there would be a camera, maybe, and a cable, and a light. But this is how we went to the studio, and it looked like this, nice and tidy. But very quickly it changed. So suddenly it was a mess. It was very interesting to see what happened to this studio. And we were mind blown what happened. It was very interesting, especially for all of us. We were just sitting there, what? And everyone else was just running around busy. They knew their stuff. It was totally normal, just we were freaking out. But we had some nice props. So this is part of the set. They did a very nice job. We had a production designer, and that was awesome. They built so interesting things that you really don't see in the movie enough to really honor that. But the equipment of the set, it somehow melted with our props. So this is the camera monitor, but it was all one giant mess. So here's our coders, who were also part of the actors, coding and doing the stuff on set. It was a mess. And especially for me, that was very stressful because I was responsible for motion tracking. So I had to make sure that there were markers on the walls. Because if I would film here and want to track that, that's very easy because there's stuff. But on a green screen wall, there's just green paint and there's nothing you can track. So I was running around and putting markers everywhere, which was not easy because all the ways were crowded. So it was very hard to run around on set. And not only did I have to put markers on the walls, I also had to make sure that I knew the focal length. Because the DP, they were changing lenses all the time, and I had to go there and somehow find out what lens he was using. And I couldn't always talk to him because he was also talking to the director and to the assistant director. So I was writing down all these informations, like which shot, how many takes, which focal length, what part of the script number. And in the end I had to transfer that to something readable and something usable. And that was, in the end, this turned out to be really critical information, because otherwise I would not have known how to make sense of all these different shots. And the focal length information is important for tracking. So when I couldn't ask the DP, I somehow had to try to get close to him so I can read the focal length on the lens. So that was quite stressful. Sometimes I only could watch through this little monitor that you see in the center that was showing me what the camera saw, so I can really make sure that all the markers are in place and everything was visible. So I was pure panic, especially in this case, because we had some shots that the camera was pointing up, and I'm not so tall, so I had to somehow try to place markers very high on the wall. And even though there was a ladder, I couldn't use it because the green screen was bent. So that you don't get any shadows, you have this bent wall, so the ladder would fall off. So I had to use a stick, place marker tape on the tip of the stick and then try to make it stick to the wall, and that was a nightmare. And there's a lesson to be learned from this. So if you ever do production on set, if you ever are responsible for match moving, don't run on set. This is a lesson that I had to learn. I was running a lot, and I was not allowed to run. And so at some point I was almost falling over falling over the camera, and I almost destroyed it, but no one has to know this, so it's a secret. So I better don't tell. And be prepared. Hire an assistant director and don't panic. If you are on set, you have to know what you have to do, and you have to talk to the guys so that everyone knows what you have to do, so that if you say, guys, I have to put a marker there, then nobody is surprised. So they have to know that this will happen and that you can go there and put markers there. So that's, well, for me it was all very new. And you have to know the shots. You have to know at what time which shot is going to be taken, and you have to know the camera of the shot, so that you are not surprised if the camera is pointing up, that there might have to be markers on the wall. You have to have different tapes, different color tapes, depending on the color of the wall and depending on the shot. Not too many markers, not too little. So there's all these things that you might have to prepare for. I have to hurry a little bit, so I'm skipping this. Well, yeah. And then, after shooting was 4 days. And when you're finished with the shooting, you end up with a bunch of footage on different cartridges, and you have to get the footage from the cartridge. Because of course Sony doesn't just give you a drive that you can put in your computer. No, they make you buy their computer where you can put the cartridge in, and then through a network interface you eventually can get the shots from the cartridge onto your computer. So you have this network, this web interface where you can mark the shots that you want to use, and then you can transfer them to your drive. And then you have your drive, terabytes full of footage, and then what? Then it's some weird format. First you have to transfer that. You cannot just use the movie, you have to convert it from the Sony format to OpenEXR. And you just not use OpenEXR because it's a special color space thing, so there are different choices that you can do. And we were told that we have to use linear ACES, which is some special format. And it looks like this. So it's a little bit dull. This is not really green, this is more, I don't know, like the wall there. So we have to transfer from the linear ACES OpenEXR to sRGB OpenEXR. And we do that with a special script or a special whatever. It's called OpenColor.io, and it makes images like this. So that's more natural compared to that. So getting the footage was really complicated. First we have to find the shot. So there are shot numbers in our storyboard, there are shot numbers from the shooting, and there are shot numbers or file numbers from the footage. And you have to align that, you make sure that every scene is using the right footage. And once you have that, you export that through this beautiful piece of software from Sony. You can see the beauty of overlapping interfaces. I wish Blender had that, because it's so convenient to work with. And eventually, at some point, you have exported that, fill in the numbers, start frame, end frame, and then you do the conversion. it's a nightmare. So this is the not fun part of doing VFX movies. So here's the conversion from linear ACES to through open color arrow, and then that was unfortunately was my job to do that. But eventually you're ready, and then the fun part starts, and that's tracking and masking. Well, masking is also not the fun part, but tracking is. So, oops, wrong button. So you have the footage, everything is set, and then you can start the fun part, which is the post-production. Well, not always. Because Blender really likes to crash, especially if you work with development softwares during open movies. It really likes the segmentation faults. Okay, but the post-production is the interesting part, and of course you need new tools for that. You have to do the tracking and match moving, the keying to get rid of the green screen, masking and rotoscoping to get rid of bicycle dudes on a bridge. Then we had to test the new multi-threaded compositor so that the compositing was a little bit faster. Photorealistic rendering is of course crucial if you want to insert 3D into footage. And color grading is also very important. And all these things didn't exist before we started the post-production. Like especially the keying was, I think the keying was really ready 1 month before the deadline or delivering the movie. Masking was also just in July, I think. The compositor still doesn't work. No, well, it does, but there are certain things that, that are tricky. So these tools have to be developed. And this is the moment where I do a demo of these tools. Maybe so far, are there questions?
Yeah, did you try to auto-recover your blend files?
Of course. Sometimes it worked. But then, now it works quite well. Now Blender really knows how to remap the path. But back then, the temp file is used, the paths are messed up, so you relink your file. All the links to your characters are lost, so you have to manually recover it. Okay, good. So I think I have half an hour left. That's a lot of time. That's good. So let's open up a new, or maybe not, maybe Tomato Branch was not crashing. Good. So post-production. Everything starts with tracking. So let's just do that. So my usual workflow is if I would open a new Blender, I go right away to the motion tracking interface, press Alt-O to open up a new shot, and then I go to the folder, which I think I have another one. No, it's this one. So let's start with this one. F to see the entire frame, to go full screen. And now we have a new button that maybe I can mention to you. It's P. P for prefetch frames. Because before I had to press Alt-A to wait for the frames to be cached. And if you have OpenEXR frames, every frame is 50 megabytes and they come through the network, you wait a lot. Because now it's just one frame per thread. But with prefetch frames, which is new, you just press P and Blender will do multi-threaded prefetching eventually. Thank you, yes, P. And then it's now using all my cores, which is 8, to get all the frames. That's a nice speed up. So once all the frames are loaded into the movie clip editor, I would start tracking. And in this case, the camera is not really moving that much. If I play back with Alt-A, it's almost static, but there's a little bit of movement. So the camera has to be tracked. The tricky part here is there is almost nothing to track. I mean, there we have a lamp, good, but the lamp is wobbling, so I cannot use it as a reference. And this is one of the shots where the camera has been pointing up, so there are not many markers on the wall, and it's very hard to see them, because the wall is unsharp. There's a lot of depth of field, or it's a very shallow depth of field, so the wall that is very far away is very unsharp. So this one marker that I can see here, you can actually see it much better than me. So here's one marker, it's hard to see, and this is almost the only point that I can use as a reference here. But since this is a green screen and the markers are all red, which in the end turned out to be very good, I can just separate the color channels here in the display and only display the red channel, and suddenly we have this almost glowing white point that I can use for tracking. And if I play back, this lamp is almost going inside of this point, so maybe I better only track the side of it. So I just Control left click here, scale it up, and I could press Control T now. However, the marker itself is still using all the 3 color channels, which you can see in the track preview here. It's still green. So there's a difference between displaying the colors or tracking the color channels. So here in the track panel, I can disable the blue and the green channel so that I only see these almost black and white image. And if I now press Control T, Blender is starting to track this one point. And usually to get a good camera track, you need 8 points. I don't see any 8 points here. If you want to do a tripod shot, you need at least 2 or 3 points. Tripod shot means the camera is just rotating like this. So I could try to track these edges here, but for this example I want to be super lazy and don't even do a tripod shot. I'm not doing anything with this marker in the 3D view. I'm using this right in the compositor, because we can use the marker information to drive images directly inside of the compositor. So that's what I'm going to do. Before that, I want to show you the masking in Blender, because I only want to have the guy. I don't want to have the lamp for my example. So what I would do is to go to a different interface from tracking to masking, and then Control click to paint this outline around the guy, like so. And then usually I should be able I should animate the mask because he's moving. So here everything is fine more or less, but here you can see the lamp is going inside of this of the outlines. I would have to make this smaller and so on. And here he's going into that. So this is something that I should take care of. Sorry, but maybe I can do that later. So before, I want to show you how this would look like in the compositor. So after 1 minute, this preparation is ready. So we go right away to the compositor. And how do we do that? We could go to the compositing layout, but instead I'm just making this a bit smaller, merging these 2 windows, and go to the compositor from here. because that allows me to quickly change between the compositor and the clip editor. Trying to force myself to talk more slowly. Use the notes, use the backdrop, delete the render layer because we don't need that. Maybe even go full screen with Shift spacebar, and then open up the new tool shelf in the compositor with T, because now we don't have to use Shift A for the add menu. We can use this menu here, which I think is quite nice. It can be improved, but it's nice because in the input I just drag out the movie clip and then set it to the correct path. So here's our footage. Maybe make it a bit smaller. And before I start using the masks, I want to show you how I can get rid of the green. So the green is very easy to remove in this case because it's quite even. The more even the green screen is, the better it will be for you. And even though the green screen here looks quite good, it's actually still uneven, which I can show you by keying out one sample of this green. So I would go to the matte panel and drag out the keying screen, just place it here, and then instead of using this white color, I'm using, of course, a green for the key color. So I click here and sample one piece of the green, and immediately everything in the background seems to be gone. But to be sure, I rather look at the matte. So we have image output and matte output. Matte is a black and white image. It's basically the alpha channel. So that looks horrible. So we have a little bit of black and the rest is gray. And gray means it's a bad key. So what happens is Blender is only setting this color here as black, and everything that is not this color will be white or grayish. So what I can do is to clip the blacks, which is just increasing the contrast. So if I go to the clip black and drag this to the right, you can see I can get rid of most of the gray. I should not go too far, because the further you go, the more aggressive your key will be. So here I'm starting to lose my hair. Well, I already lost my hair, so there was a bad key. Maybe it's better to get a better sample. And that's also one of the nice new improvements in Blender during Tears of Steel, which is you can grab your color picker and click here and keep the mouse pressed and then average all the colors. You cannot really see that here in the key color, but if I sample from here to there, you can see now it's starting to change the color because I'm also sampling these red colors and they are being averaged. So that means I can get the average color from here to there, and thereby I can get a much better key, even if I don't clip the blacks so far. Okay, that should be good enough, and that allows me now to put this image over another image. So I go to the alpha over node and just put this here, maybe set this to be pink, and now we have the guy in front of the pink. However, there's one button that I have to press to make it really work, and that is convert pre-multiply. Because the colors that I see here are not really pre-multiplied. I still have the color information there, and if I don't multiply these colors with the alpha channel, I'm going to run into problems. So I press the friendly convert pre-multiply button and have a nice key. Okay, So now to get rid of the lamp and the other guy, I can now use my mask. And I can do that by modifying the key with the mask. So I can put it here into garbage mat. So I grab the mask input, and maybe let's have a look at this by Control-Shift clicking here. It's a little bit too small, as you can see, and that's because the render dimensions are at 50%. So let's make them 100%, because the mask size is being determined by looking at the render size. Okay, so now that looks better, and I could put this into garbage mat, but the result will be not what I want. It's the opposite. So if this is the opposite, I can just invert that, like so. So now that looks okay, and we have just the guy in front of some pink. That's nice, but pink is boring, so let's get another image. And the image that I'm going to use is somewhere. Where is it? I have to find it. So, where was it? I think it's here somewhere. No, here. Haha. So that's what I want. And this image now goes behind the guy. And to make it look a little bit more realistic, we could blur the background image by using the blur node. At 1%, like so, and it almost works. But the thing is, if I would play this back, the guy is moving, the camera is moving, but not the background image. So if I go in 10 frame steps, you can see the background is totally static, and of course that's not what we want. We want it to move. And this is where we can use this one marker that I have tracked. So I go to another input, which is the track position, can choose the movie clip, then choose the object that I've tracked, and then the one tracker that I've tracked. And I have the X and Y position for that. And now to make Blender use these positions, I use another distort node, which you can find in transform here, and just input X and Y, and have to do one modification so that not the absolute X and Y positions are being used, but more the relative change to the original. So in the position, I change this to relative start so that it offsets the frame from the start frame. And now if I go through my animation, you can see the background is moving as well. And that's almost everything we need. So in the end, we put it into the composite output. And if I look at this in my render result, then you can see something still not quite right, which I guess is the dimensions, because Tears of Steel was not 1920 by 1080, but 1920 by 1012. So the dimensions, of course, have to be correct so that everything works. Now it's being cut off. So these are the correct dimensions, and this would be almost finished. Of course, to make this really work, I will have to do the masking for these two places where the lamp is going into this black area, where he is going into the mask area. But looking at my clock, I better not do that, but show you something else. So this was the basic concept of keying and masking in Blender. Of course, we had more shots that were not as easy as this. So even though the green screen was not perfectly even, it was quite even. There were other shots that were much more horrible, much more stuff to mask out. So this was quite easy, and this is why this was so fast. So just to show you something more in the remaining 15 minutes, I want to show you more tracking, because this is my favorite part in Blender, and also that was the thing that I had to do in Tears of Steel. And I'm going to show you the fun part of tracking, and that is object tracking. Camera tracking, I think everyone knows camera tracking, right? Or not? Yes, good. Object tracking probably is also well known, but still I think it's always astonishing to see how fast and easy Blender can do object tracking. SynthEyes can do that as well in other tracking programs too, but I found it to be more complicated. Blender is really easy, or it can be easy. So just to give you a very quick demo, I first prefetch all the frames, and if you want to do an object track, for example, to put the eye patch on the captain's crappy eye patch that we built, this is just a webcam that we have cut in half. So we might want to extend that with some more sci-fi looking eye patch. So we have to track the head so that we can put an eye patch there and it follows the movement. So looking at the camera movement, it's just rotating a little bit. So this is a typical tripod shot. That means I can put some markers on the wall, track them very easily, and have a solution right away. First, another button that is new. You can see the length of the movie clip is different than my scene length. This is the default scene length of 250. The movie is just 240. So now I can just press the button, set scene frames, and it will be set to this length. Okay. So I'm adding a marker by control clicking here, and I think the marker is too small because it probably, no, it still works. See, Blender is just too good. So it works. So I'm just placing the markers here and don't care about adjusting anything. I can do that still in the end. So just some random markers on the wall just to get this rotational movement. Press Ctrl T to track all of them. I can see one of them is jumping around. Thank you. So this is the marker that I will delete, because if I look at the motion here, all of them are doing almost the same movement. Just this one marker is behaving a little bit weird. So let's erase it, and now everything should be good. And the next thing, before we solve this, is to set the camera data. So the camera data in this case, I don't know really the focal length, is probably around 40, but the one very important information that I do know is the sensor size. The Sony f65 has a sensor with a size of 22.3. I think, maybe I'm already forgetting, was it 24.33? I think this is the 24.33. Let's use that. So focal length was, I think, 40. So if I now press Shift S to solve this, he's complaining that I need 8 markers on both keyframes for reconstruction. Well, yes, Blender, you know you need that, but I know better, because I know this is a tripod motion. So I don't need 8 markers to cover the depth of the scene. I just need some markers to have this linear motion from left to right. So I enable tripod motion and press Shift S again and have a solve error of 0.39, which is quite good. And that gives me the rotation of the camera. I can improve that by activating the Refine menu to refine the focal length and the K1 and K2 values. Maybe just the K1 in this case. These K values are the distortion of the footage. So if I change these distortion parameters, eventually I will be able to see how the camera or how the footage distorts. I have to activate that though. So if I enable render undistorted, I can change these values and should see something happening. Why? So here you can see the bigger the value, the more this distorts. So if I know the distortion parameters of my camera, I can compensate the distortion of the lens. So I don't know these values, so I will try to make Blender figure out this distortion values by activating the Refine menu. And if I press Shift S again, Blender has now filled in these values. It's just a little bit of distortion. And let's check the camera, how everything works. So I go to the 3D view and enable Setup Tracking Scene, which will put the footage in the background. It will place the camera solver on the camera, and I can now see that in fact everything is all right, because these markers do the same movement as the camera. Okay, so far so unexciting. Now I have 11 minutes left for an object track. So I apologize to the translators, but I have to hurry. So what we need is another object. First object is the camera. Second object is the head of the captain, because that's where I want to put the eye patch. So I go to the object panel, press the plus sign, have now the object. All the markers of the camera are gone. And now I can place a marker maybe here, press Ctrl T, and surprise, it doesn't really track that well, because this is hair. This is not a marker, this is just hair. It's fuzzy, he's moving a lot. But I can change the preset for the marker. And the first thing I do is to make it only track the red channel, because it's the best. Blue channel is typically grainy and not very good. He has quite a red face, so I guess there's a lot of color information. So let's only track the red channel. Next thing, I want to make the pattern size bigger, because Blender is trying to track everything that is inside of this square. So this should be bigger. Let's have a look at the search area. This can be bigger as well, because he's moving a lot. So let's make it maybe this size, rotate a little bit, and maybe not that one, maybe like this. And have pre-pass enabled, because it's a brute force approach to tracking, works very nice. And then because he's moving his head, the lighting changes on his head. So I'm activating normalize, so that Blender can compensate for the light changes. And then I will also activate affine tracking, because now Blender will try to make the marker deform with the motion of the head. And the last thing that I activate is previous frame matching, because for object tracking that usually works the best. So now let's see what happens if I press Ctrl T again, and this looks quite nice. So if you look at the search preview, it is moving a little bit, so it's not ideal, but that is because the preset has been set, but not the marker. So this is still using the location model. So let's create a new marker with these settings, affine tracking, track again, and that looks much better. So this really stays attached to his head, and I'm tracking now his hair and his skin, and it's perfectly stable. So this will give me a very good track of his head. And I'm going to continue with maybe his ear. Let's see how that goes. And this seems to be very stable and seems to be working very nicely. So eventually I can disable pre-pass, because pre-pass is a bit slower. So, and if he fails, you just try to make him work again by replacing it. And in this case, I need 8 markers because I need to cover the depth. And you see how good this works. This is always amazing for me. Maybe I'm easy to impress, but I think this is awesome. I tried this with Synthesize and you forget it, it doesn't work. So in this case, Blender is really unique and really powerful when it comes to tracking. So let's see if we can track this fuzzy piece of eye. Well, maybe not as good, maybe we'll make it bigger. Seems to work. So now I think we have 8 markers. Maybe let's try one more, because the more depth information we have, the better it will be for the track. And if we have that, we can start solving this, or at least we can try. And to do that, of course, I have to disable tripod motion. Now let's see what happens if I press Shift S. It's calculating. We have an error value of 1.8, which would be quite bad for a camera, but for an object, this is very acceptable. So let's see. We have here some points, and they are moving. And I'm not sure if this is correct. So let's test if this is really a working object track by selecting one point here, snapping the cursor there, should do that on frame 1, and then placing a test object. Then of course I have to apply the object solver to this object. So I go to the constraints, object solver, object is the object, camera is the camera, and for some reason you always have to press set inverse, and now it's even working. Wow. This is the first time that this works on the first try, but awesome. Now we have the object track, we are ready, we can go home. Cool. Because now we can very easily import the eye patch from somewhere. I think I have it somewhere. I think it's demo, props, eye patch extension, group. Let's take this, link append from library. Parent it to our Suzanne. Oops, no. No. Okay, and you can hide her, and then he has the eye patch. And then of course we have to do some masking so that it's actually getting occluded by the other eye patch and by his nose. But in principle, this is now all ready to go. We can now start compositing. Unfortunately, I don't have the time for that. So I should stop this here. You can see the object tracking was the easy part. Really, it was awesome. The object tracks have been done in 1 week after the pre-premiere, and we managed to still get it into the movie. So the tracking part of Blender was the most easiest, most stable, and overall the best part. The reason for that is, of course, it has been developed by some very good developers. It's him, Sergey Sharybin. Here you can see him with Ton in front of the concept of the masks, the S-curves. This is the first mask ever in Blender. This is the room where the developers are. And now I have 2 minutes left, so I'm trying to get it a bit quickly. So Blender Institute, you saw that.
Sebastian, relax. You have 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Man, this is... Oh, wow. Let's do another object track then. No. Okay, to finish this, there were some challenges in Blender during Tears of Steel, of course. There's always challenges. For example, the compositor was very slow. Especially for 4K, it was not easy to work with. You have cycles and the noise, that's always a problem. It's still a problem. Masking. Then the question, render everything in one go, the typical Blender approach, or do it maybe one by one. first render maybe the environment as one pass, render the characters as one pass, and then save that and then combine that in the end. In the end, I think this would have been nice because we might be able to fix some things still, but because some frames took 8 hours or longer to render and we saved it all in one go, there's no way we can ever fix anything. So there's pros and cons, and we decided, or let's say Ton decided to make it all in one. And it did work, but it's harder to fix things in the end if you do it like that. And now to finish this, there's one very interesting breakdown. Skip this and go to the last one. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I am just so surprised that I don't know what can I say. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have a small time for a number of questions. I hope there are not so numbered. You can just ask Sebastian somewhere else. But right now we can start the session of questions, very short one, I hope. And if you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand, I will give you a microphone, and then you can ask in English or in Polish. So let's start. Kto pierwszy? Idę do ciebie.
Hello, Sebastian. How much does Blender work with motion tracking and BVH files? Do you know this?
There was a Google Summer of Code project about BVH files. I've never used it.
Okay.
It's probably great, but I have no idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Sebastian. Thank you. So you said that at the time you were doing the film, the cycles renderer was at the early stage of the development, right? So have you combined the final renders with the Blender internal as well, or did you use cycles only?
Oh no, yes. We used cycles mainly for everything that was supposed to be photorealistic, but all these interface, like the wires, all the computer stuff, that was Blender internal. And of course also the smoke was entirely Blender internal because it still doesn't exist in cycles. So it was always a combination of a cycle scene and a Blender scene. Another example for the shots on the bridge with the hand, we had to replace the background, and that was a texture mapping simply from Blender internal because it's for that kind of stuff it's the easiest thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, does it work? Okay.
Tracking question. You are showing us tracking of a face, but we all know that as an actor is acting, his face is changing the shape as he expressing himself.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, did you have any problems with that when you placed some markers on his face and it was changing or anything?
We didn't place any markers on faces because we didn't really plan to do the face tracking, so it was just working. And the captain, the head of the captain was nice for tracking, and it was not deforming very much. So he didn't really scream or do any mimics. And there are always some points on the face that are quite static. It's the ears don't move that much, the nose, the forehead can be quite static, and here as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 markers already that don't deform that much, even if you would move your jaw. So that it kind of worked, but not always, of course.
Thank you.
Okay, some other questions? Jakieś inne pytania? Jakieś polskie pytania? Okay, so jeżeli nie ma pytań, to bardzo podziękujmy Sebastianowi. Say thank you to Sebastian if there are not more questions. Thank you. You were awesome.